Welcome to The Corner, La Source's digital show dedicated to the sport and entertainment industry. Every 2 weeks, we invite a professional to share their experience, background, and challenges. The sport industry moves fast, and having their insights is the best way to keep up to speed. Welcome to The Corner.
Hello, everyone. Glad to have you here for this new The Corner International episode. Very happy to have you listen in one more time, and very happy to welcome Daniel Kirschner today. Daniel.
Good to be here.
Nice to see you here.
Good to see you.
How are you?
I am doing well. And
Terrific. Pretty good. Another busy day. Very happy to have you here. Can you give a quick introduction of yourself, your personal and professional background for anybody who wouldn't know you out here?
Yeah, so I'm Daniel Kirschner. I am based in Santa Monica, California. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Greenfly, which I've been running for the past coming up on 7 years, which is pretty amazing. Before that, I had sort of a pretty varied professional career. I started out in technology, then I was a lawyer for a while, including in the Obama Justice Department, and I ran internet policy at the Federal Communications Commission. And then after that, I was the head of corporate affairs at Activision Blizzard, which is what actually moved me out to Santa Monica originally, the video game company, famous for everything from Call of Duty to World of Warcraft to Overwatch. I actually left that to found Greenfly with Sean Green, who is my first cousin, a friend since childhood, and he'd already actually started working on this project, and then I came over and joined him, and we've been building it together.
And so what made you go from a legal career, which is obviously very promising, and then being in the gaming industry, which is another industry with high potential? What made you take the risk of going on the other side of things and become an entrepreneur?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think there are sort of a mix of personal and professional factors. For me, as I mentioned, I started out in technology, then I got into law. I had a very successful, interesting legal career, and I had that corporate affairs job at Activision Blizzard, which was also a really fun and exciting role, working directly for the CEO over there, Bobby Kotick. But I felt like even as I was, my career was progressing, and I was involved in more and more interesting projects, I still felt I was always kind of the advisor. I was the the kind of conciliary, or the the lawyer. It's a very particular kind of role, which a lot of people really love, and I did enjoy it. But I really love the idea of operating something, of building a company, of owning a P&L. And I was thinking about that already in my career. I was actually already thinking about shifting my role at Activision Blizzard and having various conversations. And Sean had started working on this project and was talking to me about it. And I saw this would be a really fun and exciting idea to come in and just to completely own success and failure, and really be able to make my own decisions, be able to really operate an organization. So that was very exciting for me. And so at the time, obviously it was risky in many ways, but at the time I figured, look, you know what, hopefully this works out. I think it's a great idea. I'm really excited about it. If it doesn't, I could always go be a lawyer again, or go back to one of those other roles. But I really thought, I really wanted to give it a shot and see if I could do it.
Yeah, that's the thing about owning successes and defeats, and obviously being an entrepreneur also comes with losses every once in a while. But I guess you're in a pretty good path right now with Greenfly, and we're happy, obviously, to be supporting you as La Source on that topic. And just in general, looking at your background, how useful were your studies and your legal background in the process of creating a startup? Like, are there a lot of key takeaways? Because we know that there is kind of that debate right now around studies and then being an entrepreneur, and what do you learn from where? What's your opinion on that?
It's a very good question. So I think there are other lawyers who are successful entrepreneurs, and I know some of them. But I think it's actually very different temperament. It tends to be a very different temperament. I think lawyers tend to be risk averse, not all lawyers, and entrepreneurs tend to be risk loving. Not necessarily all entrepreneurs, but it's a very different mindset. For me, that's one of the things that really excited me about it was to really be taking those risks, taking those chances, and not always spending my time as a lawyer. You're often really spending your time identifying risks, so I thought that was exciting to me. Certainly, my legal background informed my career a lot. Certainly, legal issues are very important in a business like ours. Our clients deal with rights issues. There are clearance issues. There are, risk issues. There are privacy issues. I mean, legal issues impact and affect technology companies like ours very much. So there's definitely a lot of value in having that background, but I think there's also a need to kind of push against some of those earlier, more risk averse instincts. I did have that transitional period where I was working at Activision Blizzard in that corporate affairs role and thinking a lot. There was some legal component to that role, but I was working for the CEO as part of the business organization. I was not part of the legal group over there, and so that was already for me, really starting to understand the differences between operating a business and evaluating risk as a lawyer. So I'd already started to make that transition, but definitely this pushed it to another level.
You were kind of taught to be cautious about everything, and you went in the complete opposite direction, be an entrepreneur, risk and raise funds, and that's paradoxical. And so you mentioned what you like about being a CEO and taking your own risk and taking your own shots, and being empowered whenever there's success. What do you dislike about the role the other way around?
That's a good question. I really enjoy almost everything about the role, even the things that, it sounds funny to say this, but I even enjoy the things I don't enjoy. Like, there's definitely a lot of pressures, and you feel a sense of responsibility I feel a sense of tremendous responsibility to my employees. It's not just about my own success. It's everybody's success together. And, obviously, my employees all feel a sense of responsibility as well. But, I definitely feel the weight of that, and understand the decisions I make are going to impact, the lives of my colleagues, significantly. But that's something I also really appreciate, having the opportunity to make those decisions and to think about those things. So there's not much I don't like about it. I mean, certainly I like operating the business and doing deals and building the vision more than I do fundraising, for example. Like, that's something that, is very important for a tech entrepreneur.
Really love it out there. Yeah.
And some people, that's what they're good at. They can raise a lot of money, but they can't run a business. And other people, it might be the opposite. For me, it's not. It's something that's very important, and there are parts of it that I enjoy. I do love presenting the company. I really appreciate our investors, and they really become partners and sounding boards, and they're just a wonderful part of the organization. But going out there, pitching the business in that way and raising money is definitely not my favorite part of the job.
Isn't there a strategic aspect of things, of how you're positioning it, how you're presenting the growth? Like, what do you especially dislike about it? Because there's kind of a way of, that's kind of bringing all the elements of the company also together. And I've never done it, so I'm not, I haven't been in this situation, and I know that a lot of entrepreneurs dislike it. But it sounded to me like it could be that moment where you're pitching to intelligent people who will have a rationale of how they position their money and the potential return on investment. And that's kind of putting together your whole strategy, positioning your strategy in the global market. So there's kind of like putting all those elements together, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And that's a part of it that I really do like. And also, I think that is very valuable. You have to tell a story, and the story has to be true. And thinking about that story, like what is the true compelling story about your company, is also a way of clarifying a lot of your strategic thinking about the company. I've always been a writer. I've always, that's always been a big part of what I've done. I studied English literature in college and things like that. And I was always somebody who, I always clarified my thinking through writing. I was the kind of person that would put a lot down on paper and then just revise and refine. And I found that was a way of really organizing my thoughts and clarifying my thoughts. So there's definitely an element of that. When you put together a presentation, a pitch around the business, you're clarifying your thoughts, you're telling your story, and that does impact your your strategic vision, and it can be very, very clarifying and very exciting. So I like that. And I do like, as I said, that electric connection you have when you really convey the vision, and the people you're talking to really appreciate it and get excited with you, and get involved, and write a check, and become part of your company. And I mean, that's a wonderful thing. But at the same time, the part that I don't like is, we're often in a situation where, we're very busy. We have a lot of opportunities as a business. There's a lot of things that we'd like to, that demand my attention, that are really significant opportunities. And so sometimes having to step away from that, and focus on the fundraising piece, you sort of a little bit less control over how you're balancing, your resources, and how you're balancing your time and attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And just taking another step back, what, according to you, makes a great entrepreneur, and what are the skills you enjoy in other entrepreneurs that you try to adapt to yourself too?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the most important thing, and definitely not the first person to say this, I think it's probably the prevailing wisdom at this point, but the most important thing is to hire the right people and build the right team. I mean, nothing else matters if you don't put together the right group of people, and having the right group of people can solve almost any problem. Even if you've made a fundamental strategic mistake in your business, you can correct it with the right group of people. Whereas you're going to continue to make those mistakes with the wrong group of people. So I think there's nothing more important. I think the most important job of an entrepreneur is hiring. I don't mean that in, just the kind of, going out and hiring people. I mean, when you're hiring people, you're also selling the vision, you're selling the company, you're convincing people to come on board. And as an entrepreneur, you're often doing that in a context where people are stepping away from much more secure environments, much more directly lucrative environments, and taking a chance with you. And so it's very important to be able to really convey that vision, get people excited, bring them on board, find the right people, build the right community, build the right culture. I think that's the most important thing as an entrepreneur. I think the other thing that's really important is just really listening to and responding to the market, to what people are telling you, to how people are interacting with your platform, having like a mix of almost delusional confidence in the value of what you're building, while at the same time being willing to adjust based on feedback that you're getting, and not insisting that the vision that you cooked up, when you were building it in a dark room somewhere, is necessarily going to be 100% accurate. So I think you got to kind of balance those two factors really well. You've got to really believe in what you're doing and the value of what you're doing, but you also have to be willing to listen to people when they have feedback on what their needs are.
Yeah, show the confidence, but not show cockiness, and believe that everybody around you is stupid if they don't just follow exactly your vision. Yeah, but that's part of it. That actually, combines well with your sense of building a good team, so that it's not only one person's vision, but it's a global group of intelligent people's vision that is much more powerful.
Absolutely.
And so, getting more in depth on the Greenfly topic. So, what was the global initial vision? Because originally it was mostly Sean trying to do the, gathering of content for organizations.
Yes.
Like, what was your original mindset going into the business, and what was your vision for it as you stepped into it?
So the very, very first vision, Sean's very first vision, was a kind of Q&A video platform. Really, you focus on the fundamental insight that, at that point, people had already, pretty decent cameras in their pockets and the ability to record things and create content. So his original idea was a Q&A video platform, and building a network of people, starting in sports, that was a network that people could effectively pay to access through a tech layer to ask questions. So it was actually
the marketplace initially.
Yeah, it was actually pretty different. And what was interesting, so the evolution was we started to do that and to build that, and we did a couple very early deals. One, which was like a kind of early pilot, we did a Notre Dame football game where we got a bunch of alums, professional football players who played at Notre Dame to create videos for the game. And we sold that to NBC, which is broadcasting the game. And then later we did our first kind of big project around March Madness, which is going on again right now. But around March Madness, where we basically, CBS and Turner were broadcasting March Madness. And so what we did is we got a bunch of people who were super fans. Some of them were professional basketball players who played at the colleges. Others were celebrities who were known kind of passionate fans. Ashley Judd's a huge Kentucky fan, and Tom Arnold's a huge Iowa fan. And so we got these people. We basically, what we did is we sold a vision to CBS and Turner saying, hey, wouldn't it be great to get videos from all those kinds of people? And then we didn't have the people. So then we sold that vision, and then we turned around and we ran out to people and say, hey, do you want to be on CBS and Turner? And they said, okay. And they said, oh, but if you want to do that, you got to download Greenfly. So we put that whole thing together, and we actually had a lot of success building a really incredible network of people, creating videos. But what was interesting is that, so that happened and it went very well.
Just
and then
small note on that. That sounds so entrepreneurial. You sell something to the client and then you actually make sure that you can deliver against it. That sounds like so much of the first contract that everybody signs out there.
Yeah, exactly. And it worked out really well. We got really incredible people. I mean, and they used it on broadcast, and they did a Coca-Cola sponsorship against it. So it was like the keys to the game with Christian Laettner, and they had Christian Laettner, for the Duke game talking about. So that was really cool. But we kind of caught our breath afterwards, and we thought, oh, that was a lot of work pulling those people together. And now we use them, but we don't really have anything else for them to do on the platform. What does this mean? And at the same time, what was interesting is that Maverick Carter was building Uninterrupted with LeBron James, and they were working with Bleacher Report and Turner. And so they saw or came across our technology, and they thought, oh, well, we could really use this technology with our network of athletes. And so they came to us and they said, hey, can we license your tech? We don't need your relationships. Like, the last thing LeBron needs is for us to, facilitate professional athlete or celebrity relationships. But they said we really could use your tech. So that was really, like a decision point for us, where we looked at that and said, okay, wait a minute. So we could either view these guys as competitive because they're building a network of athletes, and we could try to build a better network, which just seems absurd, when you're talking to LeBron James and his team. Or we could, they could pay us, and we don't have to do any of that work. We just have to build the tech, and they're going to put all the people on the platform and use it with them and be able to manage that community themselves. And we realized pretty early that was a much better business. So that was the first kind of key transition for us, was moving from building a network of people to just doing the tech for people to manage networks they already had. And then the second big change was, as you alluded to earlier, initially we were really focused on getting content from people. So sending requests, getting back videos. But we realized once you built those connections, you had somebody on an app, you could interact with them in all sorts of rich ways. And so it's really relevant, not just to get content from them, but to be able to deliver content to them. And over time, that's become, at least an equally important aspect of our platform, which is the distribution of content, not just the gathering of content. So yeah.
So that came along the way. It wasn't a vision, a next step in the product originally. It's really something that was an opportunity that you saw.
Well, yeah. I mean, what we realized is that we built a network of, we built a tool that enabled you to onboard and manage a network of people. And so once you have that, your thinking shifts from, oh, I want to, do Q&A, gather videos from people, to what do people want to do with this network? How do they want to interact with this network? What is useful and valuable to them? And so it was pretty clear pretty quickly that, communication and messaging was important. Distribution of content was important. And then, that's become richer and richer how you can distribute content. But yeah, it sort of came organically with realizing, okay, now we've built a tool for managing a network of people. What are all the different kinds of interactions with those people that would add value to an organization?
Yeah. And so I'm assuming what you originally liked about Greenfly isn't necessarily what you like now. And so what is the favorite thing that you see your tech enable with your partners?
That's a good question. I mean, I still love the magical moments of prompting and creating original pieces of compelling content, and we've started to do that in different ways with like fans and stuff like that. So that's awesome. But it's also just incredible to see the volume and scale of activity when it comes to distributing content, like seeing NBA players, MLB players, to kind of focus on sports for a moment, sharing thousands and thousands of pieces of content, going to the platform every single day, looking at what's there, posting stuff to social, creating all these incredible moments across social, taking content from an organization and adding their own spin to it. It's thrilling to see that, and thrilling to see that level of like engagement, excitement, activity. I also love how our platform's gone from being, kind of more campaign driven around different events, like with a Q&A, you use it for March Madness, but then, you might use it again until the next March Madness. Right now it's become like a daily habit for the people on it. Like they're in the platform every day. They're looking at the content that's there. They're sharing it. So I really love that transition as well. It's been really exciting to see, and just the engagement levels on our platform. You know, as I mentioned, we've been around for almost 7 years. In the past year, there was far more activity on our platform than in the previous, 5+ years combined. So it shows just an acceleration of activity that's also just really thrilling to see.
Yeah. And one thing I hadn't seen as extensively when we joined the project, I think the one that's incredibly powerful is also the content creation aspect now. Especially in this period where there's less and less people, allowing all those organizations to gather tons of pieces of content that are immersive, that are exactly what the young generations want, and actually be able to capitalize also with a very straightforward return on investment, because that's actually content that they can sell as part of their digital portfolio.
Yes.
That's one thing I hadn't seen, and that I feel is incredibly powerful. Is it something that how long ago did you see that vision for the product?
Creating original content and being able to do exciting things with it. I mean, in many ways, that's really where we started. And we've been able to scale that and make it richer and open up new opportunities. But I mentioned like the uninterrupted early stuff that we did. For example, like one of the first videos that was created on our platform was LeBron James doing a tour of his shoe closet and talking about what the shoes meant to him. And he did that on his own with his phone, uploaded it, in the middle of the night into Greenfly. It was, I think, the number one trending video on Bleacher Report for weeks. It was an incredible piece of content. So we saw that pretty early, but it was very much focused around like these moments, events. Like there's a lot of stuff going on now. You just see that just constant flow of content coming in. That's really exciting, and we've also added a lot to improve that experience, but also to open it up to that fan content collection, like the Engage platform that we launched in the past year, and like seeing like the Dodgers celebration video when they won the World Series, and knowing that was created via Greenfly and stuff like that it's really cool and exciting to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And is it fair to say that you went with Greenfly also to be close to the sports industry, or was it secondary in your initial onboarding on Greenfly?
So we started in sports. So Sean Green, who's the co-founder, with me, who I mentioned, who actually really started on his own and worked on it for about a year before I joined. He was a professional baseball player, so probably has less name recognition in Europe and other places. But he was an all-star. He has the record for most home runs by an LA Dodger in a season. He was a really outstanding baseball player. So obviously has a sports background, relationships in sports. Really started about thinking about this from a sports perspective. So we really did start with that mindset. But I think we realized pretty early, but I don't think we really started to move, to expand the business as much, really until a few years ago. But we realized that, this kind of flow and activity and platform has every bit as much relevance, when it comes to consumer brands managing, their ambassadors, or media companies managing their talent, or a political campaign managing their supporters. Like we realized pretty quickly that the technology that we built had lots of applications. I still think sports is an incredible launch pad for a lot of reasons. There's so much passion around it. You have a built-in network of incredible advocates with athletes and also influential people who are following and supporting. So I think it's a real, and I said the real natural fandom and engagement. And so I think it's not like a random starting place for us as a business. It's a really natural fit, but at the same time, we realized, I think, pretty early, and certainly lately, we've continued to really grow rapidly outside of that this has every bit as much applicability outside of sports as it does within.
And are you as excited about the growth inside of sports as outside? Is it like, are you more of a sports fan when it comes to your tech, or are you more of an entrepreneur fan and seeing the growth just overall is as exciting outside as inside of sports?
Yeah, I would say I'm more of an entrepreneur. I mean, I love sports and I love the sports industry, and certainly it's exciting. We're hosting a panel later today that's featuring the head of social for the San Jose Sharks NHL team and the Golden State Warriors, the NBA team. And I grew up in San Francisco. Those are my two childhood teams. Like, it's pretty awesome that
Yeah.
those teams are using it, and the Giants are using it as well. Like, we've got like my three favorite teams from childhood are all using. Well, the Sharks actually started when I was already a teenager, but they were an expansion team. But yeah, so I mean, it's pretty cool and fun and exciting to see it used in that context. Like, obviously that's a real thrill, and I do love sports, but I definitely an entrepreneur first, and over time I expect sports to continue to grow, and I think it's a great fit. But I think the opportunity is even larger outside of sports than it is within sports. So ultimately, I would imagine that that growth will outpace. But yeah, so I'm definitely entrepreneur first, but it's a wonderful industry, and full of wonderful people doing awesome things, and it's really exciting to be a part of it.
And so, what is an exciting use case that you had outside of sports, just to give a bit of context of how it can be used creatively by completely different organizations?
Well, for us, I think the most exciting thing that happened last year was we worked with the Biden campaign on a massive level in the United States, and the Democratic Party, the Democratic National Committee, which that was really cool and really exciting. And again, they used it the same way. They onboarded thousands of people who were influential ambassadors and people that were in a position to help tell their story, and they shared content with them, and they prompted them to create content. They did all the cool things that a sports league would do, but it was in service of an ultimately winning presidential campaign. So that was really exciting to see that. And I think we also outside of sports, the second biggest part of our business is around media companies as well, and it's also really cool to see, for example, ESPN, working with their talent, when they're launching The Last Dance and they're getting that content out using, their incredible talent network and stuff like that. It's really cool to see all those different kinds of applications. I know that's sports adjacent, but it's media as well. So that's kind of it's kind of cool that. But I think that's actually interesting too when you think about that. I think we end up growing media through those kinds of sports adjacent things, and then before we knew it, we were working with the Real Housewives and stuff like that, as well, because the use case is exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a funny thing from a European standpoint, like the broadcaster is the biggest sports organization from a European perspective. It's different where the league has more power in the US.
Yeah.
But when ESPN being a broadcaster, I was like, well, to me, that is 100% sports industry versus media, really.
Yeah.
One last question on that. Outside of sports, do you think like people outside of sports have a better appetite and understanding of digital and technology, or do you feel like it's relatively similar to inside of sports?
That's a really good question. I think that I think there's a mix in both. Some people in sports are very digitally savvy, very forward thinking, and really driving things forward in really exciting ways. And certainly outside of sports, when it comes to brands and things like that, you see that as well. And then you see people who are, not as creative, not as digitally focused, are trying to hold on to old ways of doing things and unwilling to shake it up. And I think you see that, across all industries. So it's hard for me to generalize.
Yeah, there are good individuals in each industry, and there are bad individuals, I guess, in each industry.
Yeah, I don't know if I use the word good
Bad
or bad.
individuals,
Early
that's my bad.
adopters, there are early adopters, and then there are people who are not early adopters. And I think that I think the sports industry. What's interesting is that people will often, often people within the sports industry will talk about how the sports industry is sort of, needs to move faster and is not kind of with it enough and stuff like that. And you hear that kind of rhetoric a lot, but I think in many ways it's the opposite. Sports industry, I think, has pushed a lot of things forward. I mean, it's, the foundational streaming technology, in the U.S. was built by MLBAM, in order to do MLB games. Now it's part of Disney and it's doing Disney Plus, So, I mean, often these things are. I think sports has really propelled a lot of technology forward in really exciting ways, and I think in some ways the way that you'll hear people in the industry, kind of be hard on themselves about it, I think is one of the reasons. Like they always feel like they need to do better and need to move faster, and I think that's really healthy. Obviously it's difficult because so much of the revenue is still coming from traditional means, and so those are going to always kind of prevail in people's thinking. But I think
that's actually a very, very good example, right? Because MLBAM is now, a technology that is used, that is Disney Plus ultimately, and that has 100 million subscribers in the world on their platform. And achieving that technologically is, for anybody who worked in the OTT space, is just incredible.
And that was built by a professional sports league. Actually by a league, in order to advance its own interests in being able to stream games. So I think it's So I think it's there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of forward thinking, but there's a lot of resistance as well. But I think that's just true everywhere.
Yeah. And interesting. And so in general, like if you had to look in the upcoming years, where do you see the sports industry going as it, in the overall direction in terms of content distribution rights? Where do you see a major shift happening in the coming years?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of very foundational shifts going on, and it's a very,
You can only pick one.
I can only pick one. Now I have to think through all the different. I mean, I do think I think in the way people are consuming and participating in sports, it's evolved from turning on the TV and sitting and down and watching a basketball game or a football match to just touching sports in all sorts of different ways with a lot of short form content around social. People are obviously the betting stuff has become really big and exciting. The just people are consuming sports and participating in sports, the fantasy stuff. People are participating in sports, consuming sports in so many different ways now. And I think it's going to continue to evolve and splinter. And, a lot of people are not watching games, but watching lots and lots of parts of games in clips and highlights and moments and are following the athletes really, really well, but not sitting down in the same way that they used to sit down and watch a whole broadcast. Doesn't mean the broadcasts don't have tremendous value and are still not sort of the anchor and the tentpole, but at the same time, there's so much in the ecosystem around it. And I think that creates a lot of opportunities to monetize. It also creates a lot of challenges, because it requires some creativity and some transition and sometimes reliance on third-party platforms and things like that. But I think we're going to continue to see the way people consume sports continue to splinter and evolve in new and creative and different ways.
Yeah, that's a funny thing you're saying, because I was talking to a friend in the industry who was kind of romantic about the long length events and how that was what was building our industry, because that costs a lot of money. And I was like, but we're going to bite size, and bite size at some point might actually be as valuable, more valuable, or close to as valuable as the live content, because everybody's now consuming 10 highlights of games versus one match of a team they don't really follow otherwise, whereas it wouldn't have been the case in the past. So I do think that that's a major shift that's coming up. And obviously Greenfly fits in pretty well with that change of mindset, right?
Absolutely. And I think that, your point is a good one too. Like right now, if you look at it from a revenue perspective, there's just no comparison in terms of the contribution with broadcast rights versus short form. But I think you're seeing, even with the craziness right now, around Top Shot and stuff like that with the NFTs, you're seeing there are real opportunities to monetize in around short form content or promotional content. Certainly when we think about Greenfly, getting all this incredible content out into the ecosystem has tremendous value, for example, for the sponsors. Like if you're a jersey sponsor, you're not just relying upon the people that are going to see that jersey while they're sitting down and watching the game. You're getting, hundreds of millions, billions of views, interaction on social media with that same jersey and the same logo. So, I think really being able to demonstrate that value for sponsors and things like that is going to continue to create lots of opportunities. I think, we see with NFTs and fantasy and things like that, there are lots of opportunities to monetize outside of the core broadcast rights. And so I know, that viewership continues to splinter and stuff like that. There's still a tremendous value. Like nothing's the same as sitting down and watching an event. And it's not like that's going to go anywhere. It's still going to be a huge business and a huge revenue driver. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to grow outside of that in creative ways. And certainly we're thrilled to be a part of that. Yeah.
And I think once people will start nailing the digital monetization aspect of things, how they can capitalize more extensively on their digital assets, that will be a major shift, which will rebalance the difference of value between live and highlights.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And probably the last question, but the hardest question, where do you see Greenfly 3 years away from now? What would you like Greenfly to have impacted 3 years from now? It might be a bit easier.
So I think this period for us is really about growing. And I don't mean it's just like the numbers go up and the size goes up, but growing into new verticals and seeing new applications, adoptions, use cases. Certainly in sports, I think we're getting to a kind of tipping point. Right now we have an incredible core of customers, but I think we're going to be adding, and I know that we're going to be adding a lot more and just having a really expansive footprint across sports globally. I think that's really exciting. And I'm excited to see, how that plays out over the next 3 years. But so I think for us, there's a lot of exciting things that we're doing with the product, and a lot of exciting things that we're doing with the platform and new places we're taking it. But I think the next 3 years are really about, continuing to provide a richer, more valuable experience for our customers and growing within our existing customers, growing across the verticals that we're already participating in and adding lots of new verticals and becoming, we really think what we've built is sort of the next generation in marketing technology. If you think about earlier forms, you have more traditional advertising, the more recent waves around social media management tools and things like that for your own channels. We're really enabling our partners to really communicate and connect through the channels of their advocates. And we're being able, doing that on an enterprise level. And so we think, that's something that has, tremendously broad application. And we're excited to really, connect with, as I said, more verticals, more opportunities, just a bigger network and have billions of more engagements on content that we made possible.
Nice. I never had that, but the marketing technology is an interesting way of positioning it for the future. Daniel, it was a blast exchanging on all those topics and taking a bit of distance compared to the day-to-day.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
I enjoyed it very much. It's great. It's always great to see you, Samuel. And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks a lot for joining us, Daniel. As usual, guys, hope you liked this episode. You can find it on all the different platforms you usually find our podcasts on. Hope you liked it as much as we did, and happy to see you soon for another episode.
Le corner.